And now let's get into the second half. So before we get into Yankees and Mets, I want to get one player who you think is going to pop off in the second half and one team. Let's start with what team, either they're towards the bottom of the playoffs rankings or they're out of the playoffs, they're going to pop off in the second half and either go from a mid-tier team to the top, a lower tier team to maybe a barely playoff team. What team is going to have an insane second half compared to the first?
Do you want one from both leagues, or do you
One
want
from each league? Yeah.
Okay. For the American League, I'm going to go Minnesota Twins. I think they're a little bit better than advertised. I mean, they're playing, barely 500 ball, but obviously the AL Central's an atrocity, as we've detailed in the past. But I think they'll get hot in the second half and end up winning that division there. National League, I'm between either the Cubs and the Mets. I think it's going to be interesting to see.
Well, I certainly hope you're right about that. I have kind of two, I guess, in the American League. I'd say the one I see more likely happening is the Blue Jays, which is obviously very difficult in the division. But I could see the Blue Jays at the very least giving the Rays a run for their money down the stretch. Another one I kind of just want to throw out there as a possibility. You kind of saw last year on their magical run into the postseason, the Mariners. I don't know why. I could maybe just see them kind of get hot at the right time, just everything clicking at once. And then the National League, obviously, I hope the Mets, but I don't think we'll get that lucky. They kind of got hot towards the end of the first half, but I could see the Giants kind of really starting to turn it on in the second half. Obviously, they're not too far back in the NL West right now, only 2.5 games back. But I think they're going to be my National League pick.
I could easily see Detroit winning the Central. I don't think they will, but I could see it happening. Cleveland and Minnesota, they're all right. Detroit's all right. But I think Detroit will outperform both of them in the second half. Whether they end up winning the division, I don't know. Obviously, no one's going to get a wild card in that division. If you don't win, you're not getting anywhere near October. I've been talking about the Angels all year, so I don't want to keep saying the Angels are going to be great. But I still got the Angels with a chance to win the division. On the NL side, I think Philly is going to have a great second half. I think they're going to sneak into a playoff spot, probably first or second wild card. And I think San Diego has a chance to sneak into a wild card too. I think San Diego will finally catch fire. I think they have an offense that is too good to fail to the extent that they've had. And so I could see all four of those teams who are currently out of the playoffs end up joining it.
The Padres were another team that I was thinking possibly, but I just decided to go with the Giants. But I do agree that the Padres could possibly be another team. They look too good, at least on paper, to be as bad as they've been so far.
And with San Diego, you're going to have to look at the next 2 weeks here. Do they, like you said, possibly get hot, or do they fall apart? Because if they fall apart, they have a lot of interesting guys that could possibly get traded at the deadline.
The Reds have been pretty good too, Tom. We completely agree. They absolutely have a good chance to make the playoffs. I don't think anybody predicted that at the start of this season, but the way it's looking now, they have a real good shot to win the NL Central. They've had a couple really good runs. L.A. De La Cruz, I think, is one of the best talents we've ever seen come out in terms of someone right off the bat, a cycle that fast. He's already has almost 1,000 OPS, few home runs, nearly a 350-something average.
Another team that we've kind of talked about too in that division, and I don't think they're going to win it at this point, but we kind of talked about, are they going to turn it around soon? And that's the last place St. Louis Cardinals, 11.5 out of the division. Like I said, I don't think they're going to get that. They're also 11 on the wild card now. Do they at least make a run to get close? Do you guys think?
It's going to be a long shot. I mean, they've basically buried themselves now. Like you were saying, 11.5 out of the division. And if you look at wild card, also 11 games out. Unless they get hot, or you're looking at possibly like a 14-game win streak, something like that, which is very hard to do, obviously. I don't see it as a possibility. The thing is with the Cardinals, I don't think they're going to fire sell either if they are.
Well, their GM said they might. That's really what it's going to come down to.
Arenado said he wouldn't be surprised or something if he does get traded.
Arenado still has a couple years left, so I don't think he gets traded. But if they're more than 5 out around the deadline, which they most likely will be, I think Goldschmidt's gone.
I don't know so much about Goldschmidt. I could definitely see them trading like Paul DeYoung or Tommy Edman, possibly try to get. I mean, I get those guys are young and good, but like Cardinals can get a haul for that. There's a lot of teams that need the utility player that can play short one day, second the next, and then you need an outfielder. Gotcha. You know.
Although they haven't necessarily performed that well this season as a team, they definitely have a lot of pieces that could be very good elsewhere.
I think a very intriguing guy. Again, I'm pretty sure St. Louis would never trade him. He's a forever guy, but Adam Wainwright possibly. I'm not saying it's surefire. Obviously, Cardinals fans will kill me if they hear that. But that's a serviceable arm that's been through it, has won World Series before. I don't see why not.
And in terms of the Rays, Tom, I hope you're right. Obviously, they're nothing like they were back in April. I think they have. I think if anyone, the Baltimore Orioles do have a shot to catch that division. They're only a couple games out. I think it's probably too hard for the Yankees at this point to probably take the division. It'd be nice because then you would get the first round bye. But other than that, if I'm the Yankees, I'm not complaining if I get a wild card spot, even if it's the third spot, because then you play Cleveland, Minnesota, or possibly the Tigers. Odds not, but I think they have a good shot to possibly get there.
What's the good thing?
We will see how far the Rays can go. They still have a really, really good team, obviously, with a lot of pieces, but they're starting to feel the injuries. Same thing with Texas. Both Tampa Bay and Texas, they had no injuries throughout most of the year, and that's why they were smooth sailing. Once you have one hole in the lineup, it's very hard to keep that same consistency going. But back to Paul Goldschmidt, he's a free agent after 2024, no options or anything. So if they don't think they're going to make the playoffs next year, I could definitely see them trading Goldschmidt because they'll get a lot more for him this year than they would next year.
Yeah, for sure. And kind of going back to your point, Andrew, I know you probably – I want to get your thoughts on it at least about Texas and kind of them feeling the injuries with the Mariners now passing the Angels. The Angels now sitting 7 back from the division here at the All-Star break. Do you still see them possibly catching fire? Obviously, they dealt with injuries too over the last month or so.
Well, Tony will be all right. Trout should be back fairly soon. It doesn't look to be too bad. If they can both get healthy, play productively, they have a shot. But if one of them isn't at their best, no way.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I do think they'll need, a few other guys kind of besides those 2 or 3 guys to really kind of pull their weight maybe a little bit more than usual to kind of help propel them over the top.
And in terms of players, who do we think is going to go off? Obviously, Garth is a big fan of Randy Arozarena and Yandy Diaz, who have both been incredible for Tampa Bay. And it's gonna if the two of them compete the way they were early on, obviously Arozarena will show off in the biggest moments on the brightest stages. So come playoff time, Arozarena, I think, will be incredible. Obviously, they have a great depth piece, and the Rays always have that one sneaky guy who does have a great postseason. So do you think that guy is going to be from the Rays, or what other players do you think are just going to – maybe they were all right in the first half, but they're gonna go off?
In the AL, I definitely agree. Arozarena and maybe Diaz were going to kind of be 2 of my guys. I'm not sure about the Central, to be honest. I don't know if it necessarily one player can propel a team over the top. I feel like that one's going to be a little bit more of a team effort with kind of that division struggle so far. But in the West, obviously, I look at the Angels when those guys come back. If they can stay healthy and play the way they've been playing. Kind of going under the radar to some extent this season. The defending champ Astros, obviously, they've fallen back to earth slightly, but I wouldn't be surprised if some of those guys can really turn it on. They've obviously been there before. They can really catch fire here in the second half. And, they're only 2 games out of the division, and maybe they make a deep playoff game again.
The guy that scares me is Matt Chapman of Toronto. I think If he has a great second half, then Toronto does too. He's got an 807 OPS on the year, so he's been pretty good. And obviously, it all depends. If Arenado does great this month, maybe the Cardinals have a chance to save their season. If not, they won't. There's a lot of players who I think will be all right, but impactfully, I don't know. Like I could see someone random, maybe like Ryan McMahon of Colorado, but it's not going to make a difference in the standings by any means. But I think impactful players that could make a difference is Matt Chapman in particular. Obviously, I don't want to see that. I have nothing against him in particular, but what do you do with a Blue Jays hat on?
Again, sporting for Vladdy win the home run derby, but
I just noticed
that for the X amount of time we've been on air, but I kind of agree with you for the American League. I do have Matt Chapman. I think, like you were saying, if he can get hot, which as a Yankee fan you don't want to see. But
Austin Riley of Atlanta. I think Atlanta just keeps getting better.
Atlanta, pretty much anyone on that team. Another team in that division where some guys on the Marlins too. I think obviously we saw when the Rise did in the All-Star game. He continued to do what he's been doing all season. But there's some other guys too can really pick up their game big time, which overall as a team they've been great. But if another guy can just really go on a hot streak, they can be a very dangerous team.
Like I said, the Padres, I think Machado is going to be a catalyst to that.
I think
he had an underperforming season so far. I think he turns it around.
I mean, I'm going to stay in San Diego, but not with Manny. I'm going to say Xander Bogaerts is going to get hot because if you look at it right now, 253 batting average, 10 home runs, 30 RBIs. Hasn't been the guy that he was in April when he was first, mashing like it seemed like he was hitting a home run every night. But I think
so 2-star shortstops on the Padres, and neither of them are Fernando Tatis.
Pretty much.
Machado's played it. He hasn't really played too much short in San Diego, but his last couple of years in Baltimore, he did.
Oh, 2 left side infielders that are not Fernando. But yeah, I think if Bogaerts can get hot, I think that could possibly attribute to the Padres being buyers at the deadline instead of sellers.
And not to completely change subjects, but going back to the teams again, one that we didn't really talk about too much, the Brewers have obviously they're 1 game back in the Central behind the Reds. I think it could possibly turn into a 2-team race down the stretch in the Central. Obviously, the Cubs in third, 7 games back. But if the Brewers go on a hot streak too, that could spell danger for the Reds.
I think the Brewers are probably a more developed and talented team, but I think the Reds kind of just want it more.
I agree, at least from what we see kind of the first half. Obviously, we'll see how it plays out in the second, but I kind of think that kind of label you just put on both teams fits for this season right now.
I also feel like you can't exactly count out the Pirates just yet. I know they're 8.5 back, 8 games under 500, but that division,
they were really fun to watch in April when they were winning like almost 10 straight.
Yeah.
I think it was a fluke, and then O'Neal Cruz got hurt. McCutchen came back down to earth. McCutchen was a firestorm when he first came back. Obviously, he was a fan favorite, so when he came back, it did light a spark, but it wasn't really meant to last.
Well, I mean, Kutch just needs another furry convention to come to Pittsburgh, and he'll get on fire again.
You sent that video again.
Yeah,
that is unbelievable.
Our other host, Ryan Botcher, pulled that up, and I found the video like a week or 2 later, and
it reminds me of some of these players, like Machado this past weekend. Michael Harris this season was having his early season struggles too. You just got to play the match, and that usually turns their season around. Or obviously, there could be other reasons for McCutchen.
Meet the Mets. A lot of teams do want to this year, considering I don't think that was something. I don't think going into the season, it's like, yes, we're playing the Mets this week. Now it is.
Mets have a tough task, by the way. They played the Dodgers to start this weekend.
Yep, Dodgers.
They finally came back and played good.
Dodgers, White Sox, Red Sox, Yankees, the first 4 series out of the All-Star break.
And if you look at who's hot and who's not right now, the Orioles and Red Sox have both won 5 in a row, and the Dodgers have won 4 in a row. Meanwhile, who's not? The Angels have lost 5 in a row, and they're 1-9 in their last 10 each. The Oakland A's are lost 4 in a row, and the Minnesota Twins have lost 3 in a row.